And we're live. Welcome to episode 23 of the Coaches Show. I'm Coach Mike Bianca of the New Orleans Hurricanes, and with me is my good friend, Coach Ryan Gray of AC Diesel. On this episode, we have the pleasure to discuss paintball stats with its very own creators, Patrick Mckenna and Sam Monville. Statistics are something that every sports enthusiast loves, whether it's the quick blurb near the water cooler at work or the dinner party discussions about your favorite college alma mater or pro team, or maybe you just use them to decide your fantasy league picks, right? Whatever the scenario, there's no denying that statistics are a big part of modern day sports. But what about paintball? Many, including myself and Ryan, have been saying for a long time that statistics are one of the things that will ultimately change paintball for good, as well as move it in the right direction. Well, it looks like we may be headed that way.
Absolutely. And we can finally have real conversations about players. We can have real conversations about statistics around maybe why a team did really well if they have a whole bunch of players at the top of the statistics board. It's really exciting. So I can't wait to dive in with those guys. A couple of real quick house cleaning things. We have a few spots left for our Coaches Show clinic at NXL Texas. So if you're interested in participating in that, you need to get registered as quickly as possible. When you pay, you will probably get an error message because PB Leagues did not set up the portal correctly. No big deal. If you get a receipt, you're good, right? Just shoot us that receipt if you don't mind. You can do that at Ryan at the Coaches Show live, coachesshow.live. Also, this show is sponsored by Max Sportswear. If your team needs custom gear, get maxed. All right, let's bring the guys in.
Welcome, Good Pat evening, and man. Sam.
Pat, you're
muted.
Mute. Oh, thanks for having us on, guys.
This is not Zoom. Guys. You can stay off mute.
Yeah.
So, guys.
Well, hey, why don't we just – oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to say, first of all, and I kind of mentioned this in the green room before the show, but thank you for stepping up and doing this. It's as Mike mentioned, a critical piece to getting us continue to move in the right direction, right? So a lot of really neat things are happening. It's funny, people talk about the golden age of paintball being in that mid 2000 area, 2006 to 2008. This, in my opinion, is the golden age of paintball. We're in it, right? There's so many neat things happening. And a big part of why most of those things are happening is because of people like you guys, players, people who are coaches, staff people, whatever, stepping up and just filling a hole, right? They see a gap and they're just filling it. So thank you for doing that. It's a really important piece.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So before we dive into the real,
Sam, Pat.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I wanted to go ahead, probably going to say what you were going to say. Sam, Pat, why don't you introduce yourselves? Probably most people watching this know exactly who you are, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves and give a quick background about what you're doing these days and, kind of a little bit of a pedigree.
Sam, you want to take it?
Sure. Now went pro in 2008. Obviously, it was like Philly Americans and all that, and been with Heat. But I've been through a lot of the variations of whether it be the leagues, who's running them, who's kind of been even the formats, just all of the formats, and going from Philly with the PSP and all that, and then playing with Aftershock and the PSP, and then, helping Randy start the Heat program. It's, I've kind of been through the ringer with whether it be the league, the ownership, the formats, just kind of somehow survived throughout the years of what paintball's thrown at me. And, I love it, but it's one of those things you're in it long enough, you start to see the holes in the program. You're like, oh, these are real things. And I love, I had never played fantasy sports in my life. And Tim was like, hey man, just do it with us. It's just more fun stuff for us to drink beer and talk about. So I got into that and I loved it. I loved it because I just could look at the numbers and be like, I don't have any attachment to you. I just, you're either doing well for me or you're not. And I always liked that. And then, getting together with Pat when he came to Heat and seeing what he had been doing for a while, and I was like, I just ate it up. I was like, okay, I love this. This is stuff that has always been going on in my head, and I've never understood how we weren't putting it on paper. And the more me and Pat started talking, get involved, is like the more the gears started turning and being like, Isa could, like, we could really bring more into this. It's one of those things I just love it. Like, it's, it's funny because I love kind of looking at all this and doing all this almost more than playing. It's like, I love the playing aspect. I always tell people I'm more addicted to the competition than anything. And this is something where I'm like, this just accelerates what I like about the game. Like, this can really be useful and talking points. And I just, I don't have a background in any of it except for being a player for so long. And it was just, the more I dove into it, the more I was like, okay, I really like looking at this and getting creative with it. And, it's really taken my mind in another place. So it's, as only a background in being a player, I was like, I don't really know what I'm looking at, but I know I'm looking at something that's right.
Love it. That's fantastic. That's incredible.
It's the hard part. So I was like, I always tell people I'm a shapes and colors guy, not a letters and numbers. If you ask me to spell something, I'm getting it wrong. If you ask me to add in my head, I'm doing it wrong. But I could look at things and be like, okay, yeah, we're here. And it's like, the more I mess around everything, and the more I had my hands on it, it was like, oh, Pat, we're messing each other at 3 a.m. and we're on the phone probably 5 times a day, like going over all this. And I just laughed because I'm like, I never thought I'd be involved in something like this. Like, again, I am a player, and I'm probably a player that coaches look at like, I don't know what that guy's got going on, but okay, we put him out there and he does things. And so to know that now it's like, okay, there's going to be numbers behind this. Okay, I better be able to back that up.
Well, before we hop over to Pat, I just want to hop on that real quick, Sam, because you make an excellent point, right? And by the way, thank you to everybody in the chat. Welcome, Nick Slowiak. Yeah, I understand Pat and Sam, you dragged him into fantasy stuff too. So he wanted us to give you a shout out about that. What Ryan and I were talking about this, and we were talking to you both about this a little bit in the green room, and that is, how do you really know how good a player is, right? So many people, fans, get emotionally attached to a player simply because of a movie did, right? Like, oh, remember when he ran through and he got 4 people, he got that 4-pack, he's the greatest player ever. Yeah, but the 6 points before that, he didn't make it past the break. So is he really that amazing, right? So I think that's what's really exciting for me, stats, is it's really going to show who's really doing what, I think, or at least get that conversation started. It has the opportunity to change so many aspects of the game, especially from a coaching perspective, especially from a tendencies and scouting perspective. Heck, even from probably a recruiting and payment perspective, but we won't talk about that just yet.
Totally. The other thing I was going to say, Sam, that I love what you said, is you were talking about kind of the way your brain works and the way you operate. And every really good organization that I've ever seen, even if it's a 2-man organization, has one person who's kind of the flair and they understand the concept and they're attached to it. And then you have somebody who's like the nuts and bolts person who's, you're going to paint the car, but the other person's going to build the motor. Right. And so it sounds like maybe Pat is more of that person who, does the data, right? He's the one who's got his hands more on the data. You're kind of overseeing some of those things and then probably helping run the Instagram page, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pat would be the, so Pat would be the,
it's inverted.
Right? It's actually inverted. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the ironic part. The ironic part is I'm shapes and colors, but I always tell people it was like my Kanye moment. I went perfectly crazy to create something, and I literally was up until like 4 a.m. and I literally was right after the event. I had gone from practice to the event to the summit, flew home for like 11 hours, then went to Asheville, North Carolina for my girlfriend's birthday. And then we were there that drinking. Everybody knows it's just all it is there is breweries. So we're just kind of drinking everything. And like, I just jumped around time zones and I'm doing email, everything. I came home and I just could not sleep. And I literally was like thinking about, because me and Pat were working on some stuff. And I was literally like, why do we not have this or that? And all of a sudden I started like researching them. Like, well, and then I started like taking data we already had and started manipulating it with the concepts, and then started kind of taking individual players that in my head had where I would put them, but how do I actually formulate something? So I'm like all of a sudden figure out how to formulate these things and like doing it. And the next, I was messaging him all throughout the night while he was sleeping. And then the next day he's like, what do you got going on? I go, give me like 30 minutes and I'm going to have an example and I'm going to show you something that I don't know how it works, but it works. And now that I have my hands on it for a lot longer, I'm like, I understand it now, but I'm like, I don't know it happened. And then as soon as there was one thing down, it just branched off, and it was way more organic than I would have ever thought something like this would come to light with.
Very cool.
That's incredible. Well, I don't want to get too far before we don't get to Patrick and make sure Pat gives us some of his background and then we'll roll into all this really good juicy stuff. I mean, we're already lighting up already. So let's see what you got. Pat, give us a little background.
Yeah, I think Sam gets super amped up about this stuff. He's taken a lot of like the basic data that I've collected over the years, and I gave him access to it. And once he had access to it, he just went down the rabbit hole, which is how stats work, right? Once you start looking at the numbers, you can start correlating your own conclusions. And that's really what we're doing here. We're not exactly coming up with perfect data. We're coming up with data that can be talking points. So gentlemen like yourselves, the Spick and Span show, Play the Game, they can go and they can debate this information that's being provided. I mean, ESPN, 80% of their content is just debatable content. It's like Stephen A. Smith, like he's always talking about who the GOAT is, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe, like we're never going to know because they didn't overlap in the errors enough to actually see who that person would be. All we can use is the numbers. I mean, is the 1970 era Steelers the best football team of all time? Or is the Patriots, or are we getting ready to see the Mahomes show? Like, that's really what stats bring to us, is the opportunity to debate things that we may never actually see in reality, which is, I know we want to talk about later on the show, but I want to use data today to be able to tell how good somebody is 5, 10, 15 years from now. The longevity of the players in the league, does it really justify how long they're staying in, or should we be replacing these old men? So that's my perspective on that. Backstory for me, I went pro in 2015 with Tampa Bay Damage. I was doing stats in divisional, and then I wrote my first stats program in 2016. And how it used to work is we didn't have a way to do the data at the field. We didn't have like a surface at the time. And I know this is where I met Sam, because Tim was on the team at the time, and he was my roommate most of the time. I would actually have a laptop. I would write all this stuff down, and then I'd run back to the car, because I drove to most of the events, or I'd fly with a printer, and I'd have to print all the data and then run it back to the guys, and then they'd have that for the next match. I was like printing stuff in a vehicle, and then that evolved from there into we use Surface laptops. The reason we use Surface, we run a lot of the macros we run need a little bit more power. iPads can't run them yet, even to today, and we just continue to build that. I started the scatter chart, which we kind of tease every now and then. I know you guys have seen it. I actually started out as a magnet board. So if anybody was around in the 2018 year, I know Sam and them got a kick out of it. I used to carry this big 3 foot by 2 foot print with it was a magnetic dry erase board with the layout on it. And we would have people put green markers if they made it, and then red markers if we killed them. And we'd have it attached to a Virtue gear bag at the time. And people would be in the pits and be like, oh, okay. This is where they're going. That was the original. It has now evolved into in the heat pit. We actually have a portable LCD screen that has all the data live. so the players can walk up to it. They can see the data. They can look at the data. Ryan Smith uses it. Todd used it, right? So our coaching staff has that availability. And so I coached in Tampa for 4 years. Then I coached in Baltimore for 2 years. I attempted to retire. And then Randy and the hooligans over there at Heat convinced me to come hang out with them. Definitely Todd's a good friend of mine, and he got me to come out and hang out with them. And I just enjoyed it. And I'm the offensive coordinator for Houston Heat still, and just continue to do what I'm doing, and then building this. And this was like a dream of mine to take the information that I had and then to actually start giving it out to the public. And when I told Sam what I wanted to do, Sam really like jumped on it. Just to give the audience an idea, we have total about a terabyte of data from 2015 until today.
Wow.
So I don't know what we're going to do with any of that information. Most of it's like scribbles and data sheets, and I don't know how much it actually is worth anything. But Sam then took that raw data that I was collecting from a coach's perspective, kind of like how you guys collect data, and he started using analytics from the NFL, the MLB, and then trying to convert that into a more consumable format. I have to give Sam the credit of coming up with the idea of how to get the player rankings to be in a position where the customers can actually understand it, because that he's got his fantasy insight is tremendously better than mine. I'm just all about the numbers, and I like collecting the data and looking for trends within the information. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That's absolutely incredible. It's fascinating to me. So basically what I understand is you're using a proprietary next-gen paintball rating system.
Yeah.
As I understand it, and you alluded to this earlier, Sam, and we spoke about this at short, but you based it off the QBR in the NFL. Mm-hmm. By the way, for those who may not know, that's quarterback rating. For example, the highest QBR rating in football. What is it? It's like 158 point something.
158.3.
Yeah.
0.3. Okay. So what would in your system, what would be the perfect score in your rating system?
So
200.
Currently it's 200. I've looked at other methods to kind of, as we gather more data and we have more things that can really correlate to what a player did, we'll probably create a separate rating then to kind of give a little bit more overall situations. But for right now, keeping it more simplistic for it to be, again, consumable, like people to understand kind of what the rating is. There's zero standard right now. So we're just trying to create a standard and just keep it going, because if I could add 7 to 8 other data points right now from the previous event, but if I start telling you that there's no ceiling and that this guy was at this and this guy's at this, well, why are they at that? It starts getting jumbled up. So to not use some of the stuff to create a baseline just seemed way more efficient to get this to catch on and understood.
And just to clarify, the 200 number is almost mathematically impossible to attain.
Yes.
That was my next question.
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great too that you're not trying to muddy the water. Like, make it what it is, right? Like you said, there is no standard, so create the standard. If the standard is based on the data you're collecting right now, 200 is perfect, and you mathematically probably can't be there, that should be the standard, right? Like, no one is going to be perfect ever, right? So, right. Yeah, I think how you're describing it is perfect, right? Like, set the standard, create around your data points, whatever they are, which I'm going to ask you next. Mm-hmm. But having it at 200 and doing it kind of consistent throughout this year, like, this is your rating system, this is how you're doing it, and this is the way we're going to do it for the year. I think that's great, right? And then as you evolve, maybe you change it next year, and as you collect more data points. So speaking of data points, what are the things right now that you guys are tracking? How does somebody earn their score?
So the main the main points are things that shouldn't be able to be argued. Like that's the one thing that we're pretty big about is like, you know, I had a conversation with Maddie, and every time we post, there's always somebody on there, what about kills and stuff? And it's like, we're never going to get that, guys. We're never going to get it. Even the concept of a confirmed kill, guess what? It's so hard, and it would literally just skew absolutely everything. Because guess who's going to get the confirmed kills? The guys that went all the way down the snake off the break and shot 4 dudes in the back. You can't equate these other things, but if we put them all on the standardized set of things, it still shows who's doing a decent amount. Yes, we have to take into account stats are only part of the story.
Have you considered with
understand?
Have you considered with
activity.
kills? Yeah, and Mike and I talked about this on one of our other shows. Have you considered with kills like they do with sacks or like in volleyball with blocks where they get a half, like if you and I are both shooting the same direction off the break and the guy runs through the zone, we're both shooting, we each get half a point, right? Or the guy in the situation you're describing, the guy goes all the way down the snake, the other corner is a can, he wraps to the outside of it and actually gets shot down and from the guy in the snake, right? So he gets shot heads up and from the guy, they get a half point, right? And then at least you're getting some kind of data around, did they shoot the X number of bodies, whatever, right? But maybe they end the event with like 22.5, right? Because they shared kills with people. Because I agree with you, you can't definitively say who shoots everyone. You can't. Like you guys, as a coach, I've heard it numerous times. Guys will come off and be like, fuck, I don't know who shot me. I don't know. I went through this space and there were 2 guns. I don't know which one of them. It could have been either one, you know? So I get it. But I think there is a way to do it maybe that again, doesn't muddy it up too much. But that's later. That's later. You guys have your own system. So it's kills. So you're measuring alive off the break. Right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So off the break. Go ahead.
Well, I'll go run
you
through.
Want to just go through it?
I have the spreadsheet up.
Perfect.
So we have points played, team percent of team points played.
Okay.
Guns up, percent of guns up, alive on the break percentage, points survived percentage, points won, and win percentage, and then bunkers played. These are the amount of different bunkers are played. More dynamic players are going to have a higher ranking than somebody that's sitting in the back center because they're obviously creating more risk for themselves, or their coaches are creating the risk.
So a player who plays more spots is going to get more points.
Yes.
Ah, cool.
And so
because you're showing, but there's a ratio to that, though, right?
Yes, there is a ratio.
But that is weighted. Yeah, that's weighted in some perspective, though. Okay.
So the metric for that was I started off with obviously using World Cup, and I had, we had all the players through the event. Well, looking at it, Greenspan was playing very well, but Chris Shear was playing very well also. So all I did was I actually took all of their numbers and then I actually just maxed them both out and then made sure Chris, because he went way more spots off the break. And I said, if you two were even, but Chris took more risk, he should always end up slightly above you because the risk was there.
Because Chris was taking that Dorito 3 and Ryan was playing the back
all
side.
the time. Yeah. So Chris should always be slightly ahead of him if they played identical because of the risk involved. And so that was something that I just felt was necessary because as a guy who doesn't take very much risk off the break, I look over and it's like people are like, well, that guy's always dead. It's like, do you understand how hard it is when other teams are like, they know you're going. And if they are hitting their shots, like if they were hitting their shots against another team and then you play them, your guy made it alive every time and is doing damage. Like if me and him did everything identical, he should be valued slightly higher. And that was one of the ones that spot, bunkers played off the break had to be equated because it's like it tells a little bit about the story. So it was actually Chris Shear and Greenspan that were my two like that I used for that because I was like, well, I have all their stuff all the way through the event. And everybody talks about this one guy, but Chris was on fire and taking a lot of risk. And I think that as a player, I look at it and I'm watching that event going, I gotta stop Chris. Like, and so on paper, if we can make it that he is valued like that, I was like, we have to.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. So, and Ryan, let me know if you want to do this, but I thought we'd go down the different things that you just listed, Pat, right? And then ultimately kind of give an explanation of what each of those things are, right? Maybe give a definition of them. And then we'll talk about the actual player rating. And we'll talk about, okay, what is that player rating? Let's explain that player rating to our viewers and listeners in a perspective that, you know, hey, how did we measure all this? How did we weigh all this? Here are the things we're talking about. Is that good with everybody?
Yep.
We're good to go with that? Awesome. So obviously points played. I don't think there's much we need to explain there. You know, and that's where I think also you have a percentage of teams points played. So points played is the total number they played versus the percentage of team points is the entire points the team played the entire event. So in the case of, for instance, let's use Jacob Seawright. He played 75% of the points, but he only played 36 points. So if I'm good at my math, that's 36 divided by X, which equals 0.75. So that'd be what, 48, something like that. So 48 total points by the Canes. So everyone tracking that. Sorry, coach likes math. All right. Actually, I hate math. I just happen to be good at it. So we had points played, win percentage. Let's break that one down. This is my question. Is this the number of points a player played where the team won the point?
Yes.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. That's
you only get a win
simplistic.
if you're actually on the field playing.
Okay. All right. Which brings me to my next question, I guess. So it says point survival, right? So in other words, this doesn't deal with if they won the point and they're still alive at the end of the point. Is that the differentiation?
They have to
partially.
Yeah. So alive on the break means they survived the breakout, and then survive means they survived the point. There are some correlations to that, which Sam, I'd let you explain on the situation with conceded points.
Yeah. So say you were alive at the end of a point, but your team conceded it, you're dead. All that happened was your team saved you. That's
okay.
let's be serious. In the game of
points.
paintball, your team saved you. Your team literally said, we would rather save the time than watch you get shot. And so why would we keep you alive on the data? But then let's say a no point, you're alive. You had the opportunity
to ask how the
win a
conceded
point.
played into that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Concede, your team killed you technically. So you do not get a survival on that because you realistically, and I always tell people like, I kind of wanted it to be mean. And guess what? You were not good enough to win that point, and your team thought so too. So you are not alive. You did not survive this point. You are out. Same thing with, we do keep you a survive point though, if it's a no point, because there was no point given and you made it through the length of it. So, all righty, you're alive.
So are each one of these metrics rated the same? Are they weighted the same?
Everything's weighted.
Right. So
and that's where our like proprietary like system comes into play. So
cool. Good. So what kind of things, like what are the things from a weighting perspective, what's weighed the most?
Points.
Point survival.
Points and wins. Points and wins.
Yeah. And point survival. Is that what you mean?
So the amount of points played,
Amount of
survived,
points played.
and then the win percentage.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest things. And I think those also just I mean, if you're playing points and you're winning points, well, you should probably be ranked higher. It's one of those things where like I was just like these, and it's I literally made everything where if it was like I explained the secret sauce and I looked at you and I tried to explain it to you and probably like a 10-year-old, the 10-year-old would be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I wanted to keep everything as simple and understandable because if somebody looked at me and was like, there's no way that should be valued like that, I'm like, then we need to rethink how we're doing this. And it's,
and how me and Sam do that, just so everybody knows, we do have a secret to this. So my wife is the deciding factor on what me and Sam are allowed to do.
Yes.
So we write this stuff, we create it. She is a fan, like a legitimate fan. She comes to all the tournaments. She understands the game very well. And we give it to her before we post anything or anything we're up to. And she goes through it and she says if somebody that has like I would say that she has a very entry level understanding of the game, right? And if she can consume that information and understand how to process it, then we use that as like our baseline.
So she's your quality control.
She's our QC, and she's legitimately Sam. I think Sam will agree. She's actually in charge. We actually don't. We're not in charge of anything. We just give it to her, and she tells us how it's going to be. We've gotten shut down a lot. On a lot of good ideas that we thought were great.
I use kind of how Frage and all those guys talk about Greenspan. I have my own, and it's Ryan Moorhead.
Moorhead's another one.
I take everything before it gets to Pat's wife. I've gone through Moorhead, and when I made the original thing, Ryan is a sports guy. He is a fantasy sports guy. He is all of that stuff. We play in this stupid league we hate. We keep on trying to get out of it. That we took over Tim Montrester's spot. It's all for fantasy sports, and it's year round. You never get to stop. And it's like Adam Gardner, SK is in it, Eric Crandall's in it, Frank Connell's in it. There's all these characters from Paintball in it. And I hate it, but me and Ryan always have to look at sports stuff. And when I brought him this rating thing, I literally go, don't say a word. Let me show you everything, explain it, because you're going to try to like be changing things, doing things. Just let me show you it all the way through. And he looks at it and goes, well, who do you have? And I had a couple players done. And he goes, that makes sense. And normally Ryan argues everything, even if it's just to argue. And he goes, no, that makes sense. Like, yeah, he's like, well, can we look at, and then afterwards we started looking at more things, but he literally goes, that makes sense. And I go, okay, I'm on to something. If Moorhead's not going to start arguing with me, I know we're good. And then I was like, Pat, we're definitely on to something if Ryan's okay with it.
Yeah, I was in DC at the time. Sam called me. He's like, Moorhead approved it. I'm like, awesome. On to the next thing.
Yeah.
So do you guys have I just thought for people viewing, if you have a player stat, like one of the things you posted on your Instagram that you could kind of throw up as we're talking about it, might give people a better visual. Might help them follow along a little easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we were about to talk about off the break survival. Obviously, I think that one's self-explanatory. Did you now?
What does that one
here's
mean?
a question I have. Well, okay. Yeah, I want to ask that. Does that mean they're killed going to their primary bunker? Yes. Are they dead within the first 5 seconds? Did they die during the first engagement? What is it?
Nope. It is going to the bunker. That was something I am very big on because say you go to it's a player that is going to the short bunker on either side, and he goes there, comes out on the outside, it gets shot in his first engagement. You made the bunker. It was a personal choice to come out on the side or not.
I see.
You died during the point, not the break. And so it's very, again, I try to look at everything that coming from being on a team and playing pro, I try to do everything as true as how I would translate it. Is if I was writing the stats down in the stands with my team being like, oh, well, he died. Oh, no, he got shot on the outside. Oh, okay. Boom. If you overslid, and you were hit on the outside, you got shot off the break. But if you were to come out for the engagement, it's just the way I think coaches, players, it's how we view the game. So I want the numbers to tell that as best as we can.
Excellent. Okay. So then you have next after off the break, you had most played bunker. We've already discussed that one. And this is you're basically just tracking where each player. Now, here's where I also wanted to get some information for you on how you're getting this data. I know that the MLPB has people in the pits who are tracking the number of the player, right? The player like Nick Ripples, number 7. So that she writes down number 7 goes out on this point 3, right? Are you getting a direct feed of that, or are you doing something else to get that data when you're? Does that question make sense?
Yeah,
Yes,
no, it makes perfect sense. So we actually do have a team out in the field that is doing this. I know that you guys got to look at some of the data post-event. I know Ryan asked me in an email about some stuff that was missing. We did pull stuff off there the minute that the event ended. So we removed some data. All the Excel sheets got removed. Normally it's there. The Excel sheets with the heat maps, all that stuff is removed because that is the agreement we have with teams is that is the proprietary information that then we turn into these social media posts.
Awesome. And the reason I asked it is I was preparing for this show. Yeah, I was prepping for this, right? Like when Mike brought it up, I went back in and was looking at all the sheets, and I was like, man, he showed me this really neat Excel thing. Like, where is that? And like I'm scrolling around trying to find it, and I was like, it's not here. It's not here.
Yeah. So we yank it. So we have people that are doing mapping for other teams, like the traditional that you have coaches do, which players played what spots, their routes that they took. But then that information is then immediately being processed. So I know we talked in the before the show about this taking like 2 or 3 weeks. That's kind of what people were estimating for us to like come out with the data for that we're presenting, right? This is done, like Sam said. The only reason we didn't have it done on Monday and Tuesday is because Sam was at the summit and I had to travel for work. Most of this data that we have is already completely done. We do go back and use Go Sports, which we thank Go Sports, to check and Darren and the team over there to check data if we have like questionable situations or we think something might be wrong that we saw. But we do have multiple people. We have an excellent team of individuals that are putting in a lot of time and energy beyond myself and Sam that really bring this to life. Some of those people come all the way back from the PBA days when we had Paintball Access Stats, and they've come forward and are working with us. Most of the people we have that are scouting are at least a semi-pro player or above, or have coached at the semi-pro player or above level. So these are paintball people. They know what they're looking at. They're not just being pulled off the street. And that is a substantial investment that we've made as a small company, but we actually believe in this, and we think it's super important to take the game to the next level so that people, like I said at the beginning, these aren't 100% like what it's going to be. These points need to be argued. Was Ryan Greenspan the best player at the event? Well, according to our stats, he wasn't. He was one of the best, but he wasn't the best, which we're not going to talk about who the best was today. But that's one of the things that I want people to have that conversation. Yeah, we're not. Right. We are not going to talk about that, but that is going to be coming out in the next few days.
Yeah. So I'm envisioning, Pat, a staff of people at these events walking around with iPads, inputting this data live into a program, and then all the iPads are connected and it's going to a single source, and that's where you're drawing all this data from.
That's correct.
Is that an accurate assumption?
That's 100% accurate.
Okay.
And so like some coaches like Mike from Revo, he was one of the guys that did the beta with us. And he gave us really good feedback, but he had it live during the whole event. He could see everything that everybody saw. And there's a way for us to like use that data. Like the NFL has film to watch. Like we can share data between teams. We played Revo. Like he played Revo. They had the exact same data points that we had. There were no difference between the two teams. And it helps level the field just a little bit more depending on how the players play.
Incredible,
cool, man.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we would have points with marker up. This tells me that this is a run and gun or a laner on the break. So in other words, for instance, Jacob Seawright, 0 points, gun up. We ran him a lot. so 36 points, zero gun up. Yep. let's see. After that, we have percent of team points played, which we already discussed. Rating on the team. In other words, so this is how the player stacks up against his own teammates as a whole. And then the overall pro player rating is how the player ranks up against everybody in the division, those 20 teams.
Yep.
So we've talked about all these data points. So now we've got the overall player rating. So you've taken all these things, these points that we've talked about, they're all weighted in a specific manner based off the data that you've inputted, which spits out this number, which is, in this case, let's see, Seawright was ranked 13th overall. So I think he was his player ranking was 150 something. I can't remember, out of 200.
Let's see.
So out of
he was
150.
150.3. 150.3.
150.3.
So he was number
13.
14 out of
13,
156 players.
13, Sam.
13.
Yeah, I fixed your
I knew I got
spreadsheet.
one of those numbers right. I knew I got one
I
of those
wrote
numbers
them
right.
down. Yeah. Yeah, my list was wrong. Shapes and colors.
Yeah, you put that Russian player we fixed.
Yeah, I didn't
I
resort.
corrected it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had.
No, you're perfectly fine. We should go with the
Yeah.
most recent one, which I believe was
He's 13.
well, the most recent was
Use 13. Yep.
okay. All right. Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah.
Do we want to throw that
in the
up for some
rating-
of our
Yeah, that's it. But also think there is more in the rating system. And it's things, matches played as well as, games won. These are other things that were used. I feel they're extremely necessary because, again, you look at the way games broke down and say somebody like, Aftermath's a good example, or X Factor. X Factor is another good example. They lost games, but yet still made it on to other rounds. So you're just looking at the individual player in a situation, but it's also he is affecting his team's affecting him. And so using a weighted system, we can adding in how this affects everything gives us a better picture because, there's play like, again, Aftermath's just one of the teams I use a lot because I think they only won like half of their games. They had to play a wild card game and things like that. But when you start looking at, these metrics along with their player metrics, it tells a broad story about them with more collective data. And I'm just very big on where those lie. And I think it just helps a lot for a rating system to put these things in there. And it really can, tell a better story than just being like, he went here, he went there. It's like, okay, well, he should be ranked slightly above this other guy because he did help his team win more games, and those games should be associated to his value. And so for an overall player rating, it is in there. There's also ways to tell more information by breaking down other aspects but just for a digestible number for people to understand, I felt like it was good to put in there to where, there's players that are ranked way higher than other players and their teams didn't do as well, but they really did contribute that much and perform that well. So those things are weighted in a way that's not just going to be this guy played for a really good team, he's really up here. Well, looking at it because of the way things are, there's players way lower where their teams were playing really good. They didn't contribute a lot. They weren't contributing in a very successful manner. So they're going to be lower. And so it's just really setting a good foundation with the way we did things, was kind of the goal for those numbers.
And Sam, I think that's something that we should definitely discuss is what qualifies you to get a rating and what doesn't qualify you to get a rating.
And so
the words right out of my mouth.
Yep. The two, so I call it team asterisk. It's all players that I have that have asterisks next to their name. And it basically means they played 6 or less points or they were less than 16% of their team's points, which going through all the players, every point of the event, that was right about where these players weren't really contributors. So it's hard to give them, and my kind of metronome for that was Kuzmin from Russian Legion. He was just on the cusp, but he contributed it enough to get on there. And he was right about the one that I was like, he's the line. And that's right about where it ranked. So Kuzmin definitely contributed.
Right.
And
that also explains why you said earlier you said, he was 13th out of 156, and I went 156. I'm almost positive there's approximately 200 pro players. So now I'm starting to understand. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Because where Kuzmin played 9 points, and it was 16.9% of the team's points. That's where he's like right on that line of like, that's not very much. But say because he won 4 of those points, say he loses all 4 of those points and he loses all 9 points he played, we might be talking about a different placement for Russian Legion. So that's where it's kind of getting these players that are contributing, but not contributing very much at all, that they should not be up there where Harrison Fry.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Harrison.
Everybody loves Fry Guy, but he played 5 points. It was 9.2% of the team's points played. He would have ranked roughly
the 91st position. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that justified? Absolutely not. So we set aside, I just refer to them as team asterisk. They're just there, which the Hurricanes have. And part of this, an asterisk.
You're right. And just like we were saying at the beginning of the show, that it's to create conversation. It's to create debate. It's to get people talking about things. So I think that's an excellent point that you're bringing up with the asterisk. So yeah,
which Sam,
shoulda.
Talking about that, I think it's a good time to move in. We're going to get ready to make a post on our Instagram, and then we're going to share some stuff with you guys. So Sam, do you think you're ready to share Mr. Irrelevant? You want to explain it before we share it?
Who doesn't love Mr. Irrelevant? It's, if anybody's a football person,
cool. Let's set this up, Sam. Let's set this up. Let's set this up very carefully now. So Sam and Pat told Ryan and I that they were going to, on this live show, they're actually going to do a live post on their Instagram, right? The Paintball Stats Instagram. And that's paintball at paintball_stats on Instagram. So go check it out. They're going to do a live post while we're on the show here. And you are going to reveal what was the person's ranking, or what was this?
They're the last eligible person to be ranked. So they're Mr. Irrelevant.
Right. In which, if anybody knows the NFL, it is the last player drafted. And right now it's the greatest thing on earth because it's Brock Purdy, who obviously went to the Super Bowl. So this guy that everybody won, he was irrelevant, and he's the starting quarterback in the Super Bowl. And we're like, well, we got to do it. We have a number one. We should talk about the last one. So
Ryan, you're on mute right now if you don't know that. I know you're laughing.
No, I did know, because when I type, like when I'm answering comments in the comment section and I type, it literally sounds like a drum. It goes blah, 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 blah. So I have to mute myself, and I just went ahead and stayed muted while I got that in the collab invite and went ahead and posted it. So
It is. It's
Sam,
funny
can you
when he does it. We'll be talking.
you
in the
share it
green
on
room and
your-
It's like,
Can you share it, Sam, at all?
Let me recreate it. It's a fun one. It's necessary. He was a good sport.
yes.
We can all agree with that. Plays in their high replace.
The only reason I was laughing, I was reading the stats as you guys were talking. So just laughing.
Okay, it's fun because I have to save these as PDFs. Yes.
Lindsay's not here, so we're not very organized.
The big
right now.
reveal's coming.
This is
Yep. Yep. That's
Yeah, but this is
again,
live, right? So this is live. This is the beauty and the fun and oftentimes frustration of live stuff like this. But I trust you got this, Sam. We've set the people up. We've let them know that it's coming.
we've gone.
I've already gotten about 7 texts already saying I know who it is. People keep throwing out their guests.
Well, it's already
funny
online.
because it's
It's
actually
online. It's online. It's
Oh,
on
is
the
it?
Instagram already.
Yeah, that's
It's on
like
the
while
Instagram,
I was
okay.
on mute. Yeah, while I was on mute laughing, I was looking at it. So like they had literally
Well,
sent me the
I'm gonna pull
collab.
it up then.
Right. Yeah, you can see it on our page.
Well,
I
it's
told
funny
them
because my
like, as
stat
they're
guys
doing
already
those-
knew.
Yeah, I told them as they were like when they post those, I was like, just to invite us as a collab. We'll collab with everything you do.
That's why. Oh yeah. Now I see what's going on. Can only upload one at a time.
Let's do the first picture, Sammy.
No, I'm gonna.
So it is
I'm
on
gonna
IG.
upload this the 20th one.
My story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you can tell, his ranking is pretty low.
I love that he was a
Well,
good
Sam-
sport about it, though.
We just lost him. He'll have to jump back in.
That's because he's got like 9,000 TV monitors in the Bat Cave where he is. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually beat him on monitors. So me and Sam have a interesting rivalry when it comes to how many monitors we currently have.
I have
it's too
5.
funny.
I have
Okay,
2 here,
I'm literally
and 2 here,
on
and
one
here.
monitor right now. Oh my goodness,
We lost
I'm
Sam.
so behind the times. Yeah, we got to
So-
get Sam back.
So Pat, while Sam is jumping back in, let's move to a different question I had. Well, there he is.
Yeah. It was kicking me off in order to add these. This is show business, people. This is.
Yep.
Bob Barker would have got this right.
Well, we said all sorts of nice things about you while you were gone, Sam.
Yeah, I wasn't saying many nice things off there. I was like, I don't know why I can't just add this. I don't know what's going on.
So Ryan, we're waiting for Sam to
Well-
get his life together. What do you got for me?
Yeah, I was going to ask. So, like, you guys have made significant investment in getting this all put together. You're paying staff to go to the
Yep.
events, which includes additional hotels and things like that. What are you doing to monetize this?
So we're currently working on finding a sustainable model. One of the big things was when we started this, and I think everybody has to realize, is that we chose to pay people up front. Paintball has a history. We've all been in a long time where like a concept comes out and nobody actually, they're like, hey, when we start making money, we'll pay you then.
Right.
You know, we'll get you back.
That's the
And
model that Mike and I are on. We're on that model.
Yeah. Yeah. So we decided, we sat down, we're like, hey, we're going to front this and we're going to make sure this happens the right way so that we have the right commitment and people are really invested. Unfortunately, people want to get paid for their time. They want to get compensated. So we made sure that happened. So we have a couple different versions that we're working on right now. We're working with a few industry companies. We're working with the league, and then we're working with teams individually. Teams can contact us through our Instagram if they would like to get the data live during the events. We prototyped it, obviously, and betaed it in Vegas. It was successful to the point we needed it to be. So we'll have that opportunity for people to purchase it live during the events in Texas. And then we are continually working with the league and other industry sponsors on how we can provide this. Like we have a bunch of random stats. Like, do you guys want to know how many people got shot with GI Sports paint during the event? We know that. We know we have a rating on who the most effective coach is on player usage. We have a bunch of random stuff that's out there. Whose loader was the most effective based on the player's performance? Whose markers were the most effective based on player performance? You can start correlating a bunch of stuff that can equal revenue dollars, but it's just really decided if people want to invest in it or not.
Sure.
And I would say the next 6 to 8 months. Yeah. Yeah, I know. People did not want to pay me in Vegas, but then after Vegas, people are very interested in paying us.
The only reason I didn't pay is because I couldn't see anything.
No, I know. Well,
but now that I figured it out, and I'm going to bring a tablet. I can literally, my agency. I used to have a large insurance agency, and I still have all the computers, and several of them are Surface Pros.
Yeah, that's the best one to operate on.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring one of those with me. That way I can literally tether it to my phone, connect right there, get everything I need. And to be honest, I'll support it just because I want to see you guys keep doing it.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
We're not naive. Me and Sam have been in the industry. I own a small paintball shop on other stuff that I do. I'm not getting rich off paintball. For any, I do it because I love it. This is my invested adult passion, so I can still be a child. But if I can
love it,
if we can bring something to the league and to legitimize what we're doing, I think it's worth the personal investment on our behalf. And if we can make it sustainable, then it's even better. I think shows like yours should be able to use this data freely and be able to discuss this and argue. Hey, did Maddie pick the right MVP person, or was it somebody else? Do we make a mistake on the information that we do have visually watching? Because it's part of the story is the statistics, right? Because visually, like, not to beat down on Mouse so much, but like Mouse technically isn't being a very effective player overall. I mean, he was ranked in, where was he ranked at, Sam?
111, I want to say.
Yeah, 111. But if you ask the average kid in the field, probably, I mean, that's what he'll say. So that's why we can't get his signature.
I'm right here. I said
it. But the thing is like, but the average kid that sees him thinks he's the best player in the world because Mouse's moves are amazing, right? The way that he flows on the field, the way that he transitions between bunkers he's one of the greatest players to ever do it. But mathematically, does it add up? And I'm going to give credit to Jason Edwards here. So Jason was the first person we did. I've known his family a very long time. I obviously was on damage with them, but we have a personal relationship outside of paintball. And Jason said, today, paintball stats is a novelty. In 3 years, people are going to get hired, fired, and traded because of it.
Absolutely.
And that's really, I guess, what we want to see. That's where we really want to see paintball go. Is I want to be able to have the statistical analysis where people can make a value purchase. When Randy is buying a player, is he buying a player because we think he's good, or is he buying a value player that actually adds up mathematically? And I think that's paintball's next evolutionary step. Is these ownerships being able to see what they're actually purchasing? Are these people worth the money that they're being paid? And are there undervalued players? Like I hate to do this to Mike, but there's a lot of guys on his team that are I think undervalued because of the way that they look, but their actual playing value is a lot higher. And I want to provide people with money the opportunity to destroy his team and take all those players and then make it easier for some of us.
I was wondering where you're going.
Yeah.
Well, I would be willing to bet that many of those players have had offers and choose to stay with the Hurricanes.
Really, that's probably true. That's probably true.
That's why they're so goddamn good.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mike does a great job. But I think that should be something that should happen in 5 to 10 years. I think you should be able to take yourself, and it should be a multifaceted thing. You should be able to use your social media outreach, your playing ability statistically, and then what you provide as a human being, which I think is still always going to be a big facet within the game. And use that to 70% of the next thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
100%.
That's 70% of it, right? If you're a good
Yeah.
human being
Yeah.
and you put a good human being in a really good environment, they're going to get good. They're going to get good, right? If they're humble
Yeah.
enough to listen and pay attention, they're going to
That's
get
right.
really good. What excites me about one of the things that you were talking about, and this has been something I've complained about for years, is I think a lot of players get paid on their brand
That's right.
and not on their play, right? So they get paid on the fact that they're a name, and it's a brand, right? Like,
That's right.
So I think it's exciting, especially, again, I think based on the data points you guys are taking right now, which are really good, once you get a little further down the path and you can extrapolate that list and make it a little larger, and you can really start talking about efficiencies, right? Like number of points played versus number of people they shoot, those kind of things, I think you're going to get way more bang, right?
Yeah.
But again, Sam mentioned this at the very beginning of the show, there's no standard, right? And so what you guys are creating today as a foundational piece is huge, right? And we will utilize a lot of that kind of stuff, especially as we're going forward and Mike and I are breaking down games. Being able to bring those stats in will be huge. It'll be huge. And again, for nothing more than conversation, right? And to create argument. Well, let's look at Mr. Irrelevant really quickly before we derail too far away from him. People in the chat.
I do want to
who is
say
Mr.
that I also
Irrelevant?
think go ahead and announce it. And it's pulling up on the screen here.
Yeah.
Number 3
Harris
from the Harris Hussein. So can you read those stats off for me?
Ooh. So Harris, I love you. So Harris only played 7 points, but the team played 31. So Harris only played 22.5% of the team's points, which, using our system, he qualifies. It was more than 6 points, and it was more than 16%. So where it really starts to die off quickly is Harris won 0 of the 7 points, which in turn, he didn't survive any of the points. Again, he only played the back center on both sides. So again, for our metrics, he wasn't going many places off the break. Add on to that, the team won 1 game and took second to last. So quickly, his percentage just dropped off, and he ended up with 33.76 in our rating system, which was actually about 10 points less than the next player. So Harris was not in great shape for Vegas in the rating systems, but we appreciate his ability to be a good sport about it.
Yeah. I would like to add this, my own statistics on this with my scouting team. He played 7, but of those 7, he got 3 penalties. So now that's something that I'm sure people are probably wondering. And one of my questions I wanted to have is, and we talked about it briefly, we touched on it briefly, but will penalties start playing do we have a plan for working penalties into this type of data? Because not just from a team perspective, from that individual player perspective, how many penalties did they receive? How many penalties were they pulled on? That kind of thing. So
yes.
Yeah. So we actually have a new user interface that we're going to introduce in Texas. We've been working with some people behind the scenes and our staff here, and we should have that released here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to actually talk to a couple of coaches around the league. We'll include you all and let you guys see it. But it takes the version that we had before and accelerates it. It adds in penalties. It adds in who got the penalty, who was pulled on the penalty. It actually has who hit the buzzer. That's something that we really want to track. We did a little bit in Vegas because we want to give credit to the person that actually scores the point, right? I know that sounds such like a small thing, but if somebody's gonna jog down the field and hit the buzzer, we should give them some type of credit. Sure. A lot of those snake guys, they do their job and they walk off. So we want to look at it. I don't know if it'll actually go towards the player ranking, but it is something that we want to have as an overall piece.
And
yeah,
Ryan,
it could be a subset.
I would say, Ryan, you had asked about concepts of like partial points where it's like sacks and stuff like that. That's kind of where the player's being pulled on a penalty. Obviously, the player getting the penalty will be penalized, but the player being pulled for the penalty, we can actually slightly accredit them points. Where if the team wins the points, like say we give them a half point on survival.
Right. Yeah, because they didn't get shot.
That's right.
They didn't, but also if they lose the point, we're never going to still give you the half point alive because, again, in both directions, we cannot guarantee whether you would have lived, but you were not given the opportunity to live.
Right.
And that's a big thing to me on like the stats where some of the things were, I said we'd use like games won. Well, that's actually a percentage of the games you played, but also it's a percentage of all the possible games you could play. So say in our rating systems, Hurricanes, I believe yours was out of 8 because of the wild card game.
No, we didn't play. We went straight to quarters.
No, you didn't. It was
there was 7.
Aftermath.
Aftermath is wild card.
Aftermath is the one. Again, I always say that they're the perfect example. It's because of things like this. But theirs was out of 8, where Dynasties is out of 7 because it's out of possible games played.
Right.
They had the
Right,
chance of playing 8 games, but also for teams that didn't make it out of the prelims, your games won is out of 8 because you didn't make it out of the prelims. And best case scenario, you would have played a wild card game. So you have a percentage out of 8 games. So you do have to do things in a manner that makes sense. Because if I said, well, Dynasty didn't play the 8th game, so that's not a win. You're like, well, they didn't even have the opportunity. It's the opportunity to win that should be the metric.
Makes perfect sense.
Bingo. That makes perfect sense to me. It's logical. I do. Lots of people are blowing up in the chat about your buzzer comment. Honestly, I think that should be a subset, just kind of like an FYI. I don't think it should be weighted towards anything.
We don't want to weight it towards anything, but there's a lot of stuff that we want to track that may not be weighted. We just want to have that available data because once again, then we get to talk about it. Then we get to stay because I think it's Stuart's over there talking about it, right? Like, is he the guy that's going to hit the buzzer every time, right? Because is
he the guy who's going to elbow his teammate out of the way to hit the buzzer just for
100%? And the more talking points we have with data, the more conversations you can have long term. No matter how how many times have you turned on ESPN and you're watching a game and they're like, the Cleveland Browns have never won a football game in the third quarter when it's under 32 degrees on a Saturday afternoon. It's like, what is that? What relevance does that have? They will talk about it for 10 to 12 minutes.
All right, conversation.
And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to create opportunity in conversation because that's what creates value for the stats, right? We think it's cool because we're coaches and players and it's part of our lives. But the average consumer, how do we get them to talk about it just on a whim? And we have to find something that people can connect with. Unfortunately, since we have 12,000 paintballs in the air at any given time, the buzzer actually becomes a singular point that somebody can focus on and understand. Like, hey, if they get there and they hit that, they get a point. And if that guy does it 10 times, well, he scored 10 points. So just something to think about and something to to track.
No, I think it's interesting.
Love it.
Yeah. I just don't know that it should have very much weight.
No, but again, like Pat was saying, there's
that.
a lot of things in paintball that we haven't tracked historically, but yet there's a lot that if we would have, which I know that Jason and the league, they have a bunch of stuff that if somebody just took a day to correlate the data, we could have some pretty cool things where it's like, how many times has Russian Legion Impact played on Sunday? Well, how many times have they played in the quarterfinals? Well, what's the win percentage in that quarterfinals between those two over historical data? We have it, but we just don't. It's just sitting somewhere on a server that nobody's actually looking at this. And so instead, Maddie and those guys are just talking about these guys. It's like those guys do a great job to keep it going and trying to have conversations about it. But we can literally bring up historical data like that to me, it's like how they talk about in the NFL, like in conference games. in division games. Like, this is what it is. And is this game in a dome? Is this game on AstroTurf? Like, this is the kind of stuff we could bring up and use it in our industry's terms.
I mean, Chris
Absolutely.
Rail.
I mean, let's talk about the like these legacy pro teams, right? These legacy pro teams. How successful has Houston Heat been by the third event of every season, right? What's their win percentage by the third, fourth event of each season? I mean, there's so many
Even
different
head-to-heads.
things
We can use it in the rounds. We can literally say Heat's played in the wild card round a decent amount of times. Like, I don't even know what our win percentage is in the wild card round. And I've been to every event Houston Heat has played. Like, I just, it's one of those things where I'm like, we can literally put this on screen and talk about it to give. And again, we don't do consumable products for non-paintball people.
Right.
That's a band. I don't know if we want to go down that path. We'll be here all
night
talking
absolutely,
about
but you know what I mean?
they have, how bad they have screwed that up thus far.
Could be that these are little talking points that are very valid. And I'm an industry person and I don't even know it. And so it's like we could really just bring a lot of things to light with simple information.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, as we're moving down this path that I believe we're on right now, I believe we're getting close to some things exploding. In fact, I thought there was going to be some news shared today that I guess maybe in the next couple of days, but we're moving into a pathway where we're going to have to start really considering, what does the layman want to know? What will get them talking about who we are, what we are, why we are? And it's this kind of statistical data that can be simplified, presented in an easily consumable fashion, and real simple conversation wrapped around it. Again, with some clips from games, things like that, to make it really simple, that I believe will help to drive this thing forward. Right.
Yep.
And, but again, like, to go back to what you were talking, there are some really simple things they could start doing, and it sounds like they may be moving closer to getting things in a more consumable way. Maybe it's filming one game at a time in the split deck, whatever.
Yep.
Because Maddie and whoever is up there with him at the time, like, they have 15 seconds.
Yeah.
That's it, right? By the time they talk about what just happened, they get about 15 seconds in the middle, and then they're talking about what's coming. It's just not enough time to create any kind of hero and villain story.
No, but the potential for post-production for after an event, the potential for post-production where these clips, shorts, 4-5 minute game day type things from matches with statistic analysis, man, it could be incredible. It would sound amazing and look amazing if we did it right.
Even before the event, there's information that can be used beforehand, which I just put a little thing in there for you guys that, again, something we have worked on and created based off of data. If anybody's a football fan, you know, strength of schedule.
See, we were talking about that was going to be one of my questions, because we talked about it on the phone a couple of weeks ago. How are we going to weigh strength of schedule? Or so when you're weighing strength of schedule, we're looking at preliminary rounds, correct?
Correct.
We're looking at it.
Yeah.
Right now, this is where people stand going into Dallas. These are the schedules. These teams and their schedule going from statistically easiest to hardest. That's what it would come out to be, using the same formats the NFL uses, adjusting them to paintball, and using player data, because strength of schedule is, again, it's not like it's a thing where you're like, oh, you know, I feel this guy is good type thing. We can use some of the data points that we have. And I had written a little thing to say, like, you know, kind of how, the best way to explain it. And
it's based off last performance, correct? It's just based off last performance.
Correct. But
yeah,
you can add more into that based off of the data. So if you start adding in the actual players with the strength of schedule, because you got to think we use 5 players. And we know 5 guys are going to be out there. So if I take your team's ratings and start adding that in with what your team's actual wins and losses are and everything, you can actually look at roughly about what your average player is going to be against the other team as well, adding it in. So that's actually going to take a big effect on this situation, which again, the players are added in, but the asterisk players aren't, because that's an unfair thing to add. So that's removed. So then it's
Fantastic.
these are your main guys that you're going to use. And if they use their main guys, where do they stand up against you with your previous performances? And that's really all the NFL uses. They actually use
It's incredible.
less than we use for strength of schedule. And I think it's just something that we've never looked at and been like, why? Okay. Well, they drew that bracket. Like, that's a hard bracket. Like, is it? Is it just
Right. They
based
talk
on
about the
that guy as a
bracket of death,
brand?
right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's an excellent point. Now, for those of you who are listening to this just from an audio perspective, up on the screen, he has an Excel spreadsheet. What looks like an Excel spreadsheet, has a team list, and it's color coded. The teams have different numbers out next to their names, and they're color coded. So, for instance, the first team is Red Legion. The ranking, the strength of schedule score is a 19.40, and it's green. So there's 3 teams in the green. Then there's a different shade of green. It goes to yellow, orange, and then red. So Sam, walk me through this again. So if NYX is at the other spectrum, they're at the very bottom of the list. NYX has a score of 28.0, and they're in the red. So is that strength of schedule? So NYX had a more difficult strength of schedule versus Red Legion.
Yes. So they'll have a more difficult, and it's out of 50.
Hang on 1 second. For those listening on the podcast, there's video there now. You can just pick up your damn phone and look at this.
Oh, wait a. Yeah, you silly people with technology. So, okay, sorry, I didn't know that. I thought there were certain just audio, aspects to it. But Sam, continue, please.
Yep. So there's the scores out of 50, which right now we're working with a small sample size. It is what it is. We have Vegas. So as the year continues, those numbers are going to have a wider gap between them. But right now, Russian Legion's bracket is Infamous, Notorious, Damage, and Diesel. And on paper, that's where it's at. That is where the numbers say that's where it is. And again, the numbers are only half the story. But based off of the current sample size, that's the bracket.
Right.
But then when you look at
really
NYX,
cool
NYX is in a way different situation. They have Dynasty, X Factor, PB Fit, Iron Man.
Yeah. And that's
so
based on, and that's fascinating.
You
It'd be
start
so
adding
cool if
up
we could
the
weigh the
players.
layout against it too.
So that is something I would
completely
love.
subjective.
I've actually looked at things like that. Me and you have spoke about,
Yes,
average
sir.
length of point time and things like that. I do believe
Yes, sir.
you give us enough time and tools. Like, we could literally do these things. But again, our industry hasn't really gone after this in a manner that can be digested. And Pat was talking about coaching tools, and we can start rating coaches. Well, if anybody's, fantasy guys or sports guys, they'll know about WAR ratings, wins above replacement.
Wins above replacements.
Mm-hmm.
We have that. So I can look at your team and I can say, this player is more likely to give you wins, and this one is more likely to give you losses based on their playing and their stats. As a coach, you look at that, you'd be like, well, why have I been playing this guy? When I do play this guy, I get wins. This guy, he just keeps on telling me he shoots a bunch of guys. Like, that's,
Players don't do that.
No.
It's
Doesn't
but it's
exist
something
in
like that
professional
where which I started just calling it the par like your par rating, because it's points above replacement realistically, because it is how many points you are putting up on the board for your team. And where, if I take X Factor, for example, and I start looking at them, and it's, I love this man, and he is probably one of my favorite players, but Colt played 30.7% of his team's points, but his par rating would have been minus 2.57, to where when I look at somebody else kind of in his realm of Cody Bayless, he played 56.4. He was a minus 1.13. And you're like, oh, well, he did play more. Colt didn't play as much. But then as soon as you go to Matt Jackson, who played 74.3% of the points, he was a 1.69. He was more likely to win points than those guys. So you start equating your own roster and be like, what am I doing with this guy? Like, I know what you're capable of, but it's not what you're doing. So I have to make choices based on these things. And it just, we have to find these things to use to kind of legitimize the industry.
There it is. And that's ultimately the goal, right? So to assist in the legitimization of the sport, to give people something to talk and debate about, and make people care, right? You hear Maddie talk about that all the time. We got to make people care. So, and I think this is one way of doing that. I think that's fantastic. And I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, man.
The analogy used for that one is a seesaw. It's just, if I put two of you out there, which one of you is going to drag us down? Which one's going to lift us up? And by how much?
Outstanding. So I'm not sure you guys want to share this here, but and that's fine. But a lot of people have been asking how much this service costs. And I didn't know if you wanted to share that here. If not, or should people just DM you on the Instagram page?
Yeah, so they want to DM us on Instagram. This service is only for the pro teams. We're not offering this to anybody else, nor are we releasing the data to anyone else. We want to make that very clear. We had a lot of people reach out to us for Vegas, and we're upset because they wanted access to it, even though they weren't a pro team. And we had to turn them away. And I think that that obviously set badly with people, but the service is really designed for the pro teams because that's where the data is being used. And then all the other data is obviously proprietary for us to use for marketing afterwards.
Yeah, makes sense. Since Ryan came clean on his, I'll come clean on mine. I didn't respond because I didn't read the email till Tuesday morning. I was too busy flipping out of my mind.
What do you mean?
Running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Oh, for the data. Yeah.
Yeah, for the data. So
I was trying to look at it at the event. I grabbed Pat at one point and I was like, I don't know how to see any of this. I've done something wrong. And I'm a pretty computer savvy guy, and he's like, well, do you have OneNote? And I was like, yes. Like it goes nowhere. When I click it, I get on this screen and it does nothing. And anyway, I was able to pull it down on a computer. It just wouldn't work on my phone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we definitely had some a learning curve. I mean, because all that data was 100% live. Like you could watch, if you had access to it, you could watch them. You could watch our individuals who are taking the stats. It was literally, you could watch their pins, click on the buttons, draw the lines, do it all. You could see it happening while they were doing it. So there was a learning curve, but we got through it. We made some adjustments as we went through the event, and we're super excited about Texas and continuing forward.
Take my money.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If I had any, I would give it to you. So.
I know we're gonna make your players a bunch of money, Mike. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I hope they're working. They're working.
Not if Mike gets purchased before them.
No, stop.
That's
it.
true.
That's
true.
Where it comes in.
That's true.
So I'm just saying.
Oh boy. Anyway, so
but it's fun because there's, as I say, there's just a lot of that stuff where I know we talked about that you have a lot of stuff and data you collect. And it's like, it's stuff like that where I'm like, how have coaches and players not gone after this as a collective harder? It's just one of those things where I've always wondered, and I always tell people, I go, as pro paintballers, I have probably done it more times than I like to admit, where I've stood there with a teammate looking at a new layout going, man, you can't go there. We'd shoot that guy like 80% of the time. And we just agreed to it.
Right.
We just agreed that that's this abstract number we came up in our head by looking at something and be like, we'd shoot that guy like 80% of the time. Okay. What is that based on?
Right.
We all do it. I don't know why.
Right.
Yeah.
And but then we now, I'd imagine we all go test it. We actually go test it.
Right.
I think that's going to be 80%, and it comes out, 40. That's still in our minds, though. That 40%, that is an 80% technically when you aggregate it.
Yep. But it just was one that I always go, how many times we all stand out there going, that's right.
When you look at like it's so we'll walk Mike and I a lot when at practice stuff we've done together. We'll like stand in a gap and I'm like, you're never gonna make it through this. And then of course we start practicing. And it's like you shoot the guy 20% of the time, maybe. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, sometimes I forget how good these guys are. Right. Like and not just shooting off the break, but how good the professional players move through space. And so creatively and high and low and deep and shallow. And it's really, you guys are hard to shoot.
I always tell people it's like because we used to do it all the time. There was a Millennium event, and I'll never forget it. Ronnie kept on running out to this corner, and he got shot 100% of the time. And Tim was on the team, and Tim would slowly trot shooting out to this corner and made it 100% of the times. Yeah. And I always tell people, it's like, you're never going to beat the paintball. And it's Conor McGregor, timing beats speed every time. There is something, it's just one of those things, the gaps, that guy might be pulling up, expecting it to be one guy that's really quick and be like, oh, he didn't go. Oh, no, he's going by now. And it's just, there's different timings in players. Like you said, is he going through the tight gap? Is he going deep? Is he diving out and going up? It just, all of those equate into it. And it's like on our team, we always call it route running. Like, dude, learn your routes. Like you're just not a good route runner. That's all it is. Like, you're a really great player, but you don't know how to run a route.
Right. We call it the change up.
And I grew up playing in the front, but I wasn't ever fast. Yep. I just knew how to get through the lanes.
Yep. It is its own skill. It was like, that's why, in football, you can have the greatest hands ever, but if you can't create separation and to run a good route, you're not really gonna do that great. It's like no different with going to spots off the break. And one of those things I always tell people that I'm like, man, it is wild how many times you look at a bunker and it's like 10 feet away from the start gate and you're like, I don't know if we're gonna make that. Like, players are getting that good where like the short shot is something that you go to practice and be like, are we even gonna be able to have our gun up going there? Like it's 10 feet away. You're like, these dudes can get one ball consistently right there. It's like, and stuff like that, I want to come to light of who is really good at hitting those things. Like, who's really good at, he never hits the short guy, but he hits the wide guy. Majority of the time, it's like, the better we get at doing these things, the more our sport can really, again, those players will be paid, cut, traded all over this stuff. And I think it's just going to be awesome. It's like, I probably won't be playing then. It's like, my knees will have blown out by then, but you get the guy, like our team with Connor, it's like, this is stuff that can really change your life.
100%. I think you've led us kind of into sort of the last question, and you guys have done a great job kind of painting the picture of where you are now. Where do you see this kind of going in the next, let's start really at the micro level and say for 2025, and then where do you see it like in a more macro in 5 years from now?
So I think right now, so like the next 3 years, our goal is to make sure this is sustainable and then also create the historical metrics that we need. Because we're really like, when we talked about strength of schedule just a moment ago, we are talking about something that is based on one data point. So just Vegas.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So like, we don't really, so like that obviously can have some issues, But as we go through the next couple of years, as we continue to build this data, it's really going to be able to refine it. And I'm very convinced that on year 3, it'll be to a usable point where you can hire, fire, or trade players. But I think it's going to be year 3 that's really going to see where this goes. Beyond that, if me and Sam had free reign and my wife didn't keep us under control, we would have about 37 other things going on right now. I don't know how many websites we've bought recently, but it's stacked up pretty quick. We have a lot of ideas we'd like to do, but I'm really happy that she's keeping us locked down for the moment. Because me and Sam speak a lot, probably more than we should, on a daily basis. And we literally just come up with an idea, we build it completely out, and then we get shut down about 3:00, and we present the idea. But by then we've already bought the website and we own everything and we've built an entire thing out. So I think 3 years is really going to be at the mark. And then after that, if it makes it, it's sky's the limit, right? Paintball could be at a completely different phase at that point. And I Ryan, you mentioned about that announcement that's coming out from the league. I know Tom is making a big announcement today on the Play the Game podcast.
Okay.
So I know there's some stuff that's coming that's going to be good for the league as a whole. And I think it's a big deal to see where we go in the next couple of years. I think we're on the cusp of making it. And I agree with the original statement from the beginning of the show. I think we are in the golden time of paintball. I think competitively, this is the best group of players we've ever had. Socially, this is the best group of players that we've ever interacted with. And like public facing, I think this is like our best opportunity. Even from the teams, like we say Harris is Mr. Irrelevant, but like Harris is still like a good foot forward in paintball. He may have a cocky attitude, but like people recognize him and he does interact with the public in a very appropriate way. And I think that's really important. And I think us building our brand, which I think has been misrepresented for years, just years and years of misrepresentation. And I think now's our opportunity to move that ball forward and to support the guys. Like, I think a lot of people rest a lot of weight on Matty Marshall's shoulders. Like, he's supposed to be the voice of paintball, but I think we've all done, including myself, done a really bad job of giving him the information to be able to provide that story forward. Because all he's doing is telling a story, but there's nothing to back it up. And I think we have the opportunity with everybody around right now to not only promote themselves, but promote the league and this whole concept of paintball and just go to the next level. I think the next 3 years, I think paintball is either going to take a jump forward or we may be playing 7-man. I don't know which one's going to happen, but I'm hoping for the jump forward. And that's that's our contribution.
That is such a great point, Pat. That is such a great point where you talk about how Maddie's supposed to be the voice of the sport. You know, you can do all the hashtags you want to do. That's not moving the sport forward. Okay. So we all need to come together as a community and really do things like that. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think Ryan and I wanted to do this. We wanted to put out content for coaches because we thought, well, we want to see something. What are we interested in? And I want to see statistics. I want to see, stuff for coaching. I want to see stuff for what are you looking for? Why are you doing this process? I'm fascinated by that stuff.
Yeah. And I think what you guys are doing is amazing. When I went from divisionals, I went from being a divisional coach to being a pro coach, and there was no like path of how to do that. Like, I didn't play pro paintball. I'm just a coach. And I had to make that transition. And I know Jason and some of the guys on Damage definitely get a kick out of it. I know Tim used to make fun of me about this, but like when I had my first meeting with Jason Edwards and the team, I showed up with like a resume because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Like, there was no book to tell me what to do. I literally had a resume like, here's all my achievements in divisional and collegiate, and here's what I can bring, and here's an example of my playbook. I got a whole thing, and I remember Chad going through it and just reading it, and Chad's like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "I'm going to coach the team." And I think I was coming in after who I think is one of the greatest coaches of all time was Paul Richards. Paul the coach, and then after that it was SK, and then it was me. Like, I went from divisional to replacing SK, so which is a lot of shoes to fill there, and it was a lot, and I didn't know. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing because I don't think people understand how to make the coaching jump and how to like the avenue to take and the information to learn. For the few of us that have made it to the pro level and sustained it here, it's a difficult path. And I couldn't say it enough. I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. Again, the reality of what we were doing is the same thing you're doing. You know, we got tired of kind of hearing things discussed in ambiguity, right? With no texture, no layers. And, you know, you can only bitch about it for so long before either you got to shut up or you got to do something about it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we kind of found our way in the same way you guys did. You just kind of pick up the ball and, you know, we talk about this a lot on the show. In fact, I closed every show the same way, which is be responsible. And when I talk about being responsible, I'm talking about being responsible for the game. Do your part. Whatever your part is, do that and do it really well. And if you do, then we, instead of, you know, Tom and the league, and I feel like now the majority of the professional league pulling everybody else along, you know, down the path, maybe everybody else will start helping us push, right? And at that point, we'll find ourselves, I think, in a completely different space. We still have a long way to go, but things like stats get us where we're going. You know, those are, I want to say, it's much bigger than a little piece of the puzzle. It's a huge piece of the puzzle, right? Like you were talking about Maddie telling stories. It's the same thing. He's telling stories without texture. He's telling stories without layers because there's no content to back up a lot of the stories he wants to tell. And what you guys are doing is huge for that. It's huge.
And one of the things like I kept on finding that I enjoyed looking at was, you know, again, the NFL, you know, they don't do their own stats.
Right. Yeah.
So they use two different corporations. One, which is Next Gen, which is a combination of Zebra and Wilson that they use for the stats for the teams. Those are just stats they use for the teams and for those analytics. And then they use Genius Sports for all of the other data. They use it from two different locations for two different things. And we're talking about like the pinnacle of sports. I can't fathom what the day is like working and running things in the NFL. But I've seen my friends that work for the NXL, and I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things like when we're like, you know, we wish the NXL did this, we wish the NXL did that. It's like kind of like you guys are saying, like it's kind of on us to take some part in this stuff, because they can only do so much to still keep a product going and give something. Like I thought that award ceremony they did, I was like, I could care less about the awards. Some of them I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. But what it was, when I got there and I saw all of it happening, I went, this feels right. This is needed. This makes me feel like we're actually all a part of this. That's what it was about. And guess what? Tom hadn't aged since years ago. And I was looking at him like, dude, you need some sleep. And now I understand why. Because I saw that thing and I went, no wonder you weren't answering phone calls. You had a lot on your plate. And unfortunately, our community and our industry is not that big. It is not this. People are making tons and tons of money. It's like, it's only so much to go around. And for them to pull that off, I thought that was amazing. And the summit afterwards for the vendors was, that was one of the best things I've ever seen in paintball for the business side of getting those people together, getting the actual vendors together, getting these courses for fields to come together and learn how other big fields do things. It was awesome. And I was like, I feel like the industry has arrived. Like we did something together. We did our own SHOT Show. Like this was awesome. And it was the first time I really felt like that. And so when we started doing this, it's like, yeah, we do have to do our part. Like, yeah, it's, you know, we want to set a standard, but we kept on looking at why isn't the NXL do it? It's like, dude, they got a lot on their plate and we've been irresponsible talking about it and not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't, it's interesting that you said irresponsible, because I don't necessarily think it's irresponsible. It's just that when as the pros are aging, right,
Mm-hmm.
and getting more mature, and honestly, with maturity comes being reasonable, right? And we understand as we get older how much things cost. And you look around in NXL and you're like, this is an incredibly expensive venture. It's really expensive to do what they do. So the expectations that we used to have, back in, especially after like the 2008 kind of shit show that occurred where the league just kind of went to hell, to expect that the league can, like, if you've seen the way the NFL stat thing, it's literally a computer that recognizes the number on the back of the jersey and there is literally a little camera that follows that one player through everything that they do. Huddle is another thing that is being used now for like basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, volleyball. Like, it's all over the place. And I don't know if you've ever seen how Huddle works, but literally you set an iPad up at an iPad at the back of a court or up high at a basketball arena. There's like 4 cameras, nobody has to do anything. The camera does everything. It tracks the player. It's just, we can't afford that technology, right? Like, we just don't have that. And because it's incredibly expensive. Like, my daughter grew up playing club volleyball. We had to pay this due. It was like $1,200 a player for a 15-year-old girls volleyball team. So you're talking, $10,000 per team for the season to be able to do that. That is a tremendous amount of output. Tremendous, right? So again, I don't necessarily think it's irresponsible. You just get to a place where you're like, I got to do it, right? Like, we have to do that. If we want it done, we got to do it. We just got to pick up the ball and go.
It's one of those things. It's going to take time. It is. But it's passion. If you're not putting it in behind it to make it something, it's like every team realistically had pretty close to this data on a couple pieces of paper they printed at the hotel the night before.
Yeah.
Just, they weren't compiling it into something. And, when I saw what Pat was doing when he brought it, I was like, all righty then. This is definitely better than the scribbles we were all doing. But the more I messed with it, I was like, oh, yeah, we could have been putting this together all along. And it's just like, now that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, I could really have fun with these. And for the industry, it's like we can help each other with these talking points and these actually putting numbers to performances. And I think, to me, that's one of my favorite things, is like looking at where it's like you were saying, people have brands now. It's like, okay, what does that really mean? It's like, I always hate it because I call it, we live in the TikTok era. Like, that's just what it is.
Absolutely.
And somehow, when I was divisional, guess what? You just played. You just played, and then you just kept on trying to get better and then play against better people and like hopefully go somewhere where there's higher level people that would be like, hey, there's this good kid over there. Like, I moved to Pittsburgh. I lived in Maryland. I knew about a kid in South Carolina that would wear this white headband with shamrocks on it that everybody was watching, and it was Spica.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing on the Gridlock divisional team, and we knew about him because everybody's like, there's this kid. Okay, then we're going to go watch this kid. I had Philly Americans watching me and Chad George. They were like, we got these kids. And all of a sudden, you start getting more of these people interested in you playing, and then that's how it evolved. And now it's just like, I don't know, this bunch of these kids have YouTubes and stuff like that people are like, this guy's really good. I'm like, sure, they have views. I watched them and I just thought he was just an okay kid. Like, I didn't know, but somehow they build a brand, and I'm like, all right, let's put numbers to these people. Like, we don't need, we have their views. Cool. How is their performance? That's what we need to figure out.
But that can be their part, right? Like, the the kids doing what they're doing with on YouTube and Snapchat, whatever gets eyes on paintball, that's their part.
Oh yeah,
and I'm happy they're doing.
I'm happy for that.
I think we're all for that. I think we're all for that, right?
Yeah.
I'm just not happy when they start going, that's a quality player. You're like, who's a quality player? You talk about these players
that's emotional.
Their names have been around our industry for a while. And you're like that guy's great. Like, man, I've been watching Zupa since he played on CEP, being like, some people need to pick this guy up. Yeah. People need to pick this guy up. I tried to pick him up. I got shot down on that. And that was probably 7 years ago. And everybody's like, oh, that Zupa kid's good. Like, he's been good forever. Just nobody wanted to pay attention. Like, he was great when CEP wasn't even pro yet. He was by far the best player on that team. I was on Aftershock. I remember when they came to Chicago. And me and Tim were like, that kid's good. And they're all yelling at him on CEP. We're like, I don't know why you guys are treating him that way. It's the only reason you guys have won points. Like, he was just young. But now it's like, he doesn't have a brand. Well, nobody knows who he is except for the people in the pro division that know what's going on. And he's probably one of the scarier players when he's on the field. You're like, oh, I don't know, Zupa's still in. Yeah, I think we can tell those stories about those players.
He's a threat. And you're right. I think he's one of those guys that wasn't promoting himself and was dragged by his previous teams. So, but you're right about the brand thing. It's fascinating. We could look at that from a sociological and psychological perspective, and we could write a dissertation on it. But no, that's incredible. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Well,
gentlemen, we are about an hour and 45 minutes into this deal, and I get up at like 4. So if you guys have anything,
it's past Ryan's bedtime, is what he said.
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Exactly. Anything you want to leave us with?
Sam, do you have anything?
Just support the vision. We really do just want this. The more we get it readily accepted as something that is trying to do it correctly, we don't want to talk about Harris Hussein being Mr. Irrelevant, but it gives us talking points. These players, I love them all. I've been around a while. I don't want anybody to be like, well, why'd you rate me like that? I didn't. These are numbers based on what happened, but we need to be able to put these metrics on the players so then we can take this game forward. And I really just want it to be accepted like next gen is, and things like that for our industry. So then moving forward, we can really take this stuff to other industries and actually have something of substance to show them of who these people are. Just help us get these concepts and ratings understood and accepted.
Yeah.
One way you can do that is you can go like their IG Paintball Stats, right? Go share it, spread it, like it, leave comments, leave suggestions for things they can do. If you're a math guy, hit them up, let them know what's up. Right. So love it. I'll be sending some ideas.
Pat, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just echoing what Sam said, all the support that we can get to try to drive this forward and get it out to the masses so people have something to talk about that's beyond just the visual story and the words of Maddie in the league. Just another facet that we have. And, we're excited about this. We're 100% committed this year. And our goal is to get to year 3 to see where it's at. And we're just going to keep driving towards that. So if you guys are a pro team, you're interested in getting our information, definitely go over to our IG and DM us. If you have any other questions, you guys can reach out to the IG. Me and Sam are always relatively available. And be on the lookout for at least one website that's getting ready to go live. I think people will enjoy it. I can't talk about it today, but I guarantee once it goes live, we'll probably be back to have a discussion.
Love it. Yeah,
I love it.
And
real.
I'm not gonna send you a message on Instagram because I'm not a 14-year-old girl. I'm just gonna send you an email.
Yeah, you have our email. Yeah.
We prefer it that way too, but
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Once the new website goes live, we will have a general email box that people can email to contact us through there.
Perfect. And when will people be getting the rest of the top 10 coming out here? So
the top 10 start tomorrow. So top 10 start tomorrow. WC honestly put a wrench in it. Sam had to go out to WC, and I had to go do some stuff. So we were both gone. So tomorrow we'll start the top 10, and then we'll be doing some double posting, which we try not to do, but we'll be releasing everybody else from 26 through 155. It'll come out in 10-person blocks, kind of like how we did 15 or 16 through 25. So we'll be doing that. So everybody will have all the stats. Everybody that got ranked will have all the stats going into Texas, so everybody kind of know where they're at and how they stack up. And we'll continue to do that throughout the season.
Would you guys be willing when we do our pick'em? So we do a pre-event show with Shane Pastana and SK. Would you guys be willing to like jump in and do 15 minutes of like some stat talk before we make our picks? Not before Texas, but before Atlantic City.
Yeah, we can do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you can like bring that strength of schedule thing and show that. We can talk a little bit about that. I just think, again, the more we can get you guys out in front of people and get the stats out in front of people, the more conversations we can create. So
no, we definitely agree. I will say that the website that is coming and the thing that we're doing, I can almost guarantee once you guys see it, you will be picking up the phone and calling us, and we'll be back on.
I'm still just going to send you an email.
Yeah.
Please do.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Thank you guys for having us on. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Man, that's cool. Just exciting stuff. Man, that's so cool. I'm so excited about it. Thank you to everybody in the chats for all that. Sorry we didn't get to all your questions. But wow, I'm really excited for those two. I'm really excited about what they're doing. I can't wait for this website. Can't wait for the rest of the data to come out. Can't wait to talk to them. Man, I don't know. I need to go find some money.
Have so many things. Yeah, I have so many things swirling through my head about how the data, like all the different ways it can be used, and it's really exciting. Yeah, really exciting.
Like I said, I'm going to go get a second job. I'm going to go get a second job and try and get this data for my team. So,
well, for Texas, you can use your coaching money your clinic money. So
that's true. Yeah,
that's up.
Don't forget.
Yeah. Speaking of the clinic, so if you haven't signed up for the clinic and you'd like to participate, it will be Thursday at NXL Texas, 10 a.m. at the Pro Field and the VIP area. There will only be 40 people allowed to sit in on that clinic. So if you want to participate, you need to get signed up ASAP. Then also, we had one other thing. Yeah. Nope. That's it. I will see. Yep. So next Tuesday, we will have, we have a great show in our post-production show. We're going to have Thomas Taylor on, his son. We're going to talk about youth paintball. We're going to break down the match from Texas with the two of them. And then the next week, we will have our pre-show for Texas, where we will have Shane Pastana and SK back on. We'll do our picks. That'll be a really fun show. And then we're at the tournament. So nothing. We'll probably try to get some lives in. Actually, I'm going to try to get Jason to let me go live with him for a few minutes. We'll see if that works out. Maybe he'll let us. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Coaches Show. Thank you to Go Sports for use of video, Major League Paintball for all the support for the show, Jake Jones for all the production work, Alan Sorensen, Kevin Fillers, and Tom Cole. This show has been brought to you by Max Sportswear. When needed, get maxed. I'm Ryan Gray with Mike Bianca. Be responsible.